Hi guys, so we're going to do some more factoring today, but this time A is going to be a number that's greater than 1. So yesterday we were practicing the AC method and we're going to apply that again today. But what I want you guys to do is I want you to just watch me do the first one, pause it, rewind it, watch it one more time, and see if you can see the pattern, okay? So our first example I'm going to start with is going to be 2x squared plus 6x plus 4. And the first step we're going to do is we are going to split the middle term, which is 6x right here. It's in the middle. It's the middle term, using the AC method. And if you remember from yesterday, the AC method was the little x. So I'm going to draw the x. So if you guys remember, on top is A times C. So A is 2, C is 4, A times C is 8. And on the bottom is B, which is 6. And we have to think of what can we multiply that makes 8, but when we add, we get 6. This one's a pretty easy one. 4 times 2 makes 8, and 4 plus 2 is 6. So this is going to look a little bit different from yesterday. If we add these two numbers, we get 6. Let me go back over here. So I'm going to first drop this first term down, and nothing's happening to it. It's going to stay 2x squared. But when I said we're going to split the middle term, we're doing that. We're going to take this term and we're splitting it into 2. It becomes a 4x and 2x. 4x plus 2x is 6x, but the reason we use these two numbers is because they work in here. I couldn't just do 5 and 1 because 5 and 1 doesn't work. So you have to do this method first to figure out those two numbers, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down my 4, plus 4. Okay, so step 2. And I'm going to use these directions for everything we do today. I don't know what I'm writing. Step. Okay, step 2. We are going to group using parentheses. So it's really helpful if you have another colored pen. And I'm also going to use a highlighter. So if you don't have those two things, but you know you have it around the house, go ahead and pause it and go grab those. Okay, so what I mean by group using parentheses is I'm just going to create parentheses around, leave the addition sign in the middle. So that's all that I did, okay? So all I did is add parentheses, and we're going to factor out a greatest common factor from each parentheses. So this is why you had to learn greatest common factor before you did this. So in these parentheses, see if you can think about what is the greatest common factor. Well, 2 times 2 makes 2, and 2 times 1 makes 2, and 2 can also go into 4, so definitely 2. And then they both have an x. What's the greatest amount they both have? Well, since this one has 1, we can't have more than 1. So this greatest common factor is 2x. Now when we look at this one, we're going to look at the greatest common factor of this one. This is a 2 and a 4, so they both have a 2 in common. This has an x, this one does not, so they don't have an x in common. So just a 2 is what they have in common. Okay? So then from here, I'm going to go to finish factoring it out. So this is all part of factoring it out. So I'm going to just draw, this is where step 2 started. We drew the parentheses, we're factoring, and now when we actually finish factoring it out, these are the greatest common factors. So I'm going to place 2x outside, okay? And if I factor out 2x, remember I have to think 2x times what gives me 2? Well, 2 times 1 is 2. And x times what gives me x squared? So I need just another x. So 2x times another x is a total of 2x squared. And then how do I get 4x? Remember, I'm trying to recreate these parentheses. So since there's a plus sign, bring it down. 2 times what is 4? 2 times 2 is 4. X, well, we only need one x, so we're just going to leave it right here, because if we add another one, it changes this value. So we just factored out this parentheses. We put the GCF in front. And we're going to do the same on this one as well. So the 2 goes in front. And I'm going to drop down this plus sign because it's a positive 2. And I'm underlining it just to help guide you and help you remember where things went to. If you want to, draw arrows so you can see that, that will be helpful. So then when we're looking at this, we're going to think 2 times what is 2? 2 times 1 is 2. And then 2 times what makes x? So 2 times x is 2x. And then for the next part, we have our plus sign. We're going to bring it down. 2 times what is 4? 2 times 2 makes 4. And I want you to go ahead and look at that. Do you notice anything repeating? Hopefully you notice that x plus 2 and x plus 2 repeats. And there's a reason for that. If it doesn't repeat, you did it wrong. So when you factor this out, you will know you did it correctly because you will find that these two numbers repeat themselves. So then we're going to, I'm just going to put x plus 2. Now, these numbers might be different, but in this case, in this problem, it's x plus 2. It repeats. And if it repeats, you can now rewrite. Okay? And when I rewrite it, this is all you do, is that the two GCFs go together. And I'm going to underline them again just to help remind you where these came from. So those two on the outside go together here. And the one that repeats is going to go right next to it. So I'm going to label these just to remind you what happened here. So this was, these two were the greatest common factors that we factored out, the 2x and the 2. They ended up coming together here. And this ends up being the repeated side. You can write these in different order. They don't have to be, this part doesn't have to be first. You could put x plus 2 and then after it could be 2x plus 2. You're going to get the same answer. If this makes sense to you, I'm going to just kind of show you, well, how is this? I'm not going to do all the math work, so just listen. if you remember when we're multiplying, you have to distribute this to both parts. So if I was going to multiply it back out to try to get this, I would do 2x times x, which it shows right here, and then 2x times 2, which would be here. So this is another way of writing it. And then we would use the second term. So right here, 2 times x, which is the same as this, and 2 times 2. You don't really have to know all that. I just want to show you, though, how they all connect to each other. So these are your steps. There are 3 steps. I'm going to go ahead and do a few more problems. As I do them, watch me do the whole problem first, and then see if you can try to do it on your own. If you can't, rewind it. So this time I'm going to use, let's use 2x squared. Sorry, not 2x. Let me use 3. Okay, so let's use 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. So step 1, we're going to split the middle term. Let me circle it again. This term splits using the AC method. So we have to figure out what 2 numbers that this number splits up into, just like we did here. So 6x split into 4 and 2x. You have to remember the x. So that's all I'm going to do first. So on the side, on top is always the a times c. So a. And if you feel more comfortable just putting little letters above here to help you remember where everything is, go ahead and do that. I'm going to finish drawing out my diagram. A times C goes on top, B is on bottom, multiplication on top, addition on bottom. Okay, so what 2 numbers, A times C, A is 3, C is negative 4, so I get a negative 12. B is negative 11. Okay, so what can I multiply that makes 12, and when I add it, I get 11. And notice I intentionally did not include the negatives, because sometimes if you just start thinking of what numbers multiply and make 12, well, 3 and 4 multiply and make 12, but when you add them, you're only going to get 7, so you can't get 11. How about 12 and 1? 12 times 1 is 12. But we need it to be negative, so here we have to figure out which sign goes where. Well, if when we add them, we have to get a negative 11. Hopefully you thought about the 12 has to be negative to get a negative 11. So these are the 2 numbers that this splits apart into. They split apart into a negative 12. Don't forget the x. And a positive 1. Don't forget the x. If you want to write the 1, you can. In your final answer, like right here, you do need to take the 1 out because Canvas will mark it wrong. But if you're working through the problem and you have 1s here and you just leave them here on accident, no big deal. Sometimes some people find it helpful to see that 1 here. Some people don't want to see it at all and just get rid of it completely. That's kind of going to be up to you. So next step, bring down the rest of the problem. Bring down 3x squared and bring down minus 4. Make sure you don't change any of your signs. Okay, if you think about what we did next, step 2, we grouped using parentheses. So the parentheses will always go to the first 2 parts. So this part, leave the middle sign in the middle, always on that part. And we're going to see if we can find the greatest common factor. So looking at this part, this time since we've already done it, I'm just going to write GCF out here. So greatest common factor, we have 3 and negative 12. Well, I know 3 goes into itself and 3 goes into 12. So it's the greatest common factor. They both have an x in common. This has 2, this has 1. The greatest amount they both have is just 1. Go to the other side. The only thing they have in common is a 1. 1 can go into itself, and 1 can go into -4. And then they don't have any x's in common, so it's just a 1. So these two are our greatest common factors. What did we do next? We continue to factor it out. So if we actually factor out 3x, what is the remainder inside? So 3x times what makes 3x squared? Looks like all we need is one more x to make it x squared. Bring the sign down. 3 times what number is 12? 3 times 4 is 12. And we need only one x, and we have that one x, so we can stop right here. On this side, we're factoring out a 1. We need to put the 1 here. If you ever come across that you didn't pull the 1 out and it's blank, it is still a 1. And to get this answer here, 1 times x is 1x, and 1 times -4 is -4. Let's see if you guys remember what to do here. What repeats? I'm at step 3. This time I don't have x plus 2, but I have x minus 4 repeats. So if it repeats, we rewrite. Let's look at how that happens again. So back up here, we're at this step. If you notice, we took both of the GCFs and put them together in one parentheses, and the part that repeats itself just went into one parentheses also. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The 3x plus 1. I'm going to keep highlighting it so it's easy to follow. 3x plus 1 goes here, and on this side is going to be the repeated one, x minus 4. And remember, when you're putting this into Canvas, do not have any spaces between any of this that will mark it wrong. Okay. I want to do a few more just to make sure you guys feel comfortable with this pattern. Let's go ahead and turn the page. Let's do x squared. Actually, I will do 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. First step, I do the AC method. Once again, if you want to write the little letters above here to help remind you where everything goes, that is helpful. Draw out your diagram. So A times C. B is on the bottom. Multiplication on top. Addition on the bottom. A times C. So A is 2, C is -12. Multiply them and you get -24. B is on the bottom. B is 5. So what numbers can we multiply that make 24? Let's see. I was thinking 6 times 4 makes 24. But if I add or subtract them, I'm not going to get 5. So these two numbers cannot work. 2 and 12? How about that? 2 and 12, I can get 24. I can make one of them negative and get -24. But if I subtract them, I'm going to get a 10. I can't get a 5, so those don't work. What else multiplies to make 24? 3 and 8? Okay, 3 times 8 gives you 24. I can make one of them negative to get negative. And if I subtract them, when I add them, I want to get 5. So that means I have to make one of them negative because that will force me to subtract. When I add, I subtract the negative. The 5's positive. The 3 is going to be negative. -3 plus 8 is positive 5. So those are my two numbers that are going to work. They are going to replace 5x. Always remember the x has to be with the number, because if you leave the x's off, negative 3 plus 8 is just a 5. We have to include the x on there as well because we need it to be 5x. Are you getting faster at this? Do you remember to drop down the other two sides, the first and last term? Whoops, that's the wrong way. So bring down 2x squared. Bring down, don't forget the sign, negative 12. We're going to create our parentheses and then do greatest common factor. When you're doing your homework, it would be super helpful if you had these notes with these 3 steps next to it so you can refer back to that. So greatest common factor. Well, 2 can go into itself and 2 can go into negative 3. It cannot go into negative 3. So greatest common factor is 1. Greatest common factor, this has 2 x's, this has 1 x, so the greatest amount they both have in common is just an x. On this side, greatest common factor, 2 goes into 8, 2 goes into 12. Is there a larger number that goes into both? 3 goes into 12, but not into 8, so that doesn't work. 4 goes into 12, 4 goes into 8. That would be our greatest common factor. This has an x, this does not, so they don't have it in common, so I can't write it down. So now I'm going to finish factoring out those numbers. And I'm going to rewrite this as just an x since there's only one of them. So I'm going to do x. X times what will give me 2x squared. So I need a 2, and I need one more x. X times 2x is a total of 2x squared. And then x times what is negative 3. We are just missing the negative 3. We already have the x. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Let's put the greatest common factor in front of here. I'll keep underlining them. This will help you visually read through your work. 4 times what makes 8? 4 times 2. And if we need an x, we're just going to add it here. So 4 times 2x is 8x. Bring down your sign. 4 times what? It makes 12. 4 times 3 makes 12. Okay? Are they repeating? Yes, we have these repeating exactly, so we know we did it right. So we can rewrite our final answer with the greatest common factors in front. I forgot the plus sign. Plus 4. And then the repeated binomial, write it next to it. All right, let's try one last one. All right, so let's write down 5x squared minus 21, x minus 20. So let's do our diagram. Here's a times c, b is on the bottom, times is on top, add on the bottom. Okay, a is 5. C is negative 20. When I multiply those two, I get negative 100. B is negative 21. Okay, so what can I multiply that makes 100? First thing I'm thinking is 10 times 10, but 10 plus 10 is 21, or 20, not 21, so it's not 10. There really isn't a whole lot of factors of 10, or I'm sorry, 100. There's 1 times 100, which will never give us 21. There's 2 times 50. That can't give us 21. 3 doesn't work, 4. There's 4 and 25. So 4 times 25 makes 100. And if I subtract them, I get a 21. So which one has to be negative to get a negative 21? Yep, hopefully you said 25. Your highest number has to be negative to get a negative answer. So these are our two numbers we're going to use. We're going to replace those with our middle number. So we're going to put down the 4, and this one is a positive 4. Don't forget your x. And then we're going to put minus 25. Don't forget the x, because together they make negative 21x. Bring down your first and last term. Put the parentheses. Keep the negative sign in parentheses. And we're actually going to add the addition sign between them. So there's always going to be an addition sign between them. So if this number ends up being negative, it goes inside the parentheses and we put the addition number here. Now we're going to find the greatest common factor. So looking at these two, they don't have a number in common, but they have x's in common. They have just one x. That's all they have in common. These two, I notice 5 can go into both of them. And since they're both negative, I'm going to use a negative 5. So a negative 5 can go into both of them, but they don't both have an x, so I can't use an x in common. So now let's go ahead and factor these out. So I'm going to factor x out of the first part. What do I need to multiply x times to get it to be 5x squared? All I'm missing is a 5 and another x. And that'll give me a total of 5x squared. To get 4x, I already have the x, so I only need a 4. Put the plus sign. I'm factoring out the negative 5 here. When I factor that out, I'm going to think negative 5 times what number gives me negative 25. So I need a positive 5. Negative times positive is a negative 25. And if I need an x, I need to put an x here. To get negative 20, negative 5 times a positive 4 will give me a negative 20. Do these match? We have 5x plus 4. They match exactly, so we know we factored it correctly. So we're going to combine the greatest common factors over here. And the repeats go over here, right next to each other. Okay. So the very last problem I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the notes that I taught you before these ones, we had our leading coefficient of 1. And the method I taught you, we use this, and I'm just going to reapply this and show you how this works. So this way is a little longer. The way I taught you is a shortcut, but I do want you to know that this way works every single time. So here's A. We don't see a number, so we know it's 1 because it's hiding. Here's B, and here's C. Okay. So do our diagram. A times C. B is on the bottom. Multiply on top. Add on the bottom. So A is 1 times C is negative 6. And B is 5. Okay. What could I multiply? That makes negative 6. Or I'm sorry. I multiply and I get negative 6, but when I add it, I get a positive 5. So let's try 3 and 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and if I add both of them, I do get 5, but how do I figure out the signs? Well, when I multiply them, only one can be negative. And if I do that, when I add them, I get a -1. So that didn't work. What if I gave the negative sign over to the 2? Okay, so I multiply them and I get -6, but when I add them, I get a +1. Okay, so these don't work. Well, we also know that 1 times 6 makes 6. If we subtract them, we get a 5. One of them must be negative because this sign is negative. But if we want a +5, we need to make the 1 negative. Check that out. -1 times +6 is -6. -1 plus a +6 is a 5. So those are our two numbers we're using. Now, if you're really paying attention and you notice this is a 1, I would use the shortcut method because it really is a little bit shorter than what I'm going to show you right now. But the work I'm showing you right now, all of these steps, can be used on every single problem. So if you ever forget, you can go to these notes. It'll work for everything. So what did we do? Circle this. It splits apart into -1. Don't forget the x and 6. Don't forget the x. That's how we get 5x. Bring down the first term. Bring down the last term. Add some parentheses. Find a GCF. These both have an x in common, so I can factor it out. X times x is x squared, and x times -1 is -1x. Greatest common factor, 6 goes into itself, so 6. 6 goes here. 6 times what is 6x? We just need an x. And 6 times what is a -6? That would be -1. What do we do next? Take our greatest common factors, throw them together. These two repeat, so we know we did it correctly, and we make them 1. All right, guys, we are done with the notes. You can go ahead and go back to class. Show me these 5 examples from your notes, and I will have you start on your homework.